Baytown 911, what's the address of your emergency?
Yes, ma'am. I need an ambulance to check at my nephew. He's something physical bad. I need an ambulance.
What's going on there?
Daddy, my stepson, he's conscious, but he's like throwing up and shaking.
There's a guy in the shopping center. He looks like he's convulsing. I think he's on drugs. I think he's high on that synthetic marijuana.
Oh my God, I don't know what's wrong with him. He's unconscious. He was throwing up. I don't know. I don't know, overdose or something. I don't know.
My brother-in-law, he came over here, and I think he was smoking that Kush stuff. He's not talking, he's not responding or nothing, and I'm scared.
Baytown 911.
Yes, ma'am. I need the police and an ambulance. It's my stepson. He's so zombied out he can't even talk.
Do you know what he takes usually?
Kush.
And he's not communicating with you?
Unresponsive. He's like a zombie.
Baytown 911, where's the location of your emergency?
For my job, I answer 911. I also dispatch police, fire, and EMS to those that need help. Usually when the people call it in, they'll say he's either high on this Kush or he's Kushed out, or the guy will either be acting crazy. I've received a few calls where they were foaming at the mouth. We've had some crazy calls where people were running down the street and they'll say he's just out of control. Or there's some that have said that they're just throwing furniture everywhere. You know, he's high on whatever that drug is called. I mean, that's the common terms.
So the street name is Kush here in Houston, but realize Kush is not a universal nickname for synthetic cannabinoids. In fact, Kush typically refers to a specific strain of marijuana.
The problem with Kush is the term Kush is not really Kush. What it is a synthetic marijuana. Looks more like potpourri, and people add additional chemical to it.
I tend to call it Kush, K2, stuff like that, fake bait.
There's a strain of real marijuana called California Kush. So the synthetic marijuana was created originally to stimulate that. So that was just a brand name. So even though it's carried a whole bunch of names, like the one that everybody's smoking right now is the Climax 15X. But it's just, it became, the lingo was Kush and it stuck. So that's why it's Kush, even though that's not even necessarily the brand anymore.
What do you do to this Kush? Because it's not real Kush. Kush, you know, Lebanese, hash, and what do you get? If this pack says potpourri, but it doesn't taste fragrance, somebody removed the fragrance and then they spray chemicals on it that would give certain individuals a subliminal high of marijuana, but you're not gonna get her, and then they more chemicals and more and it has them discombobulated and off the hook.
There's something that's been man-made. There's something that's not to be smoked. There's something that's been laced with rat poison, acetol, sleeping pills. So it's not to be body consumption. I mean, consume. Well, you know what I'm saying.
Synthetic cannabinoids are literally hundreds of different compounds that were first created decades ago to study endocannabinoid receptors. They were designed to study certain disease processes so they could be used therapeutically. The problem is, back in the early 2000s, they were found to be potential drugs of abuse.
Synthetic cannabinoids are nothing more than man-made chemicals that are designed to mimic the chemical that we find in marijuana, THC, which gives it the hallucinogenic effect.
With synthetic cannabinoids, there's no telling what chemicals are sprayed on it, you know, to help with the hallucinogens. So, you know, you could be smoking, you know, roach spray or, you know, any kind of anything that's added to it.
It's not only the drug. The synthetic cannabinoids sprayed on potpourri are one thing, but the way it's manufactured, they take a tarp, they put potpourri in a tarp, and they spray with a garden sprayer. So there's no quality control in the making of it. This batch may be 10 times more powerful than this batch,
They dump it in a trash can, so they leave compounds in the trash can, and we see them take 4 or 5 gallons of the compound mix, and they may pour it into that trash can. They're mixing it up, just mixing it all together. Now, what happens is, though, a lot of that liquid compound settles to the bottom of the trash can, for example. And in that process, that leaf compound is also there. Well, you're going to have a lot more of the compound at the bottom of that trash can that settles to that leaf compound, mixing together, creating hot spots in that product. So once the trash can it's been mixed up thoroughly, or in their estimation it's mixed up thoroughly, they will pour this compound leaf material out, spread it out, let it dry, then they sweep it up. It's then packaged. And those where we see the Kush packages or Mr. Happy and so forth out there. Then, once it's packaged up inside the warehouse, they're bound up, as you'll see in the video of them working on bounding the packages up for distribution out. And that can be distribution to smoke shops around the Houston area, Dallas, the East Coast. There's no telling where they're going to be sending it to. Wherever they have a contact, they're going to be sending those products out.
And then on the streets, they spray stuff on it. I mean, they spray roach spray. They mix it with soma. They put cocaine on it. It's just, it's a horrible drug.
They worry about us youth, us young people, you know, especially in college, where terrible things can happen. You can be led astray. But I just want you guys to have the most confidence in me, because I mean, more than ever, I am stronger in God. I have more discipline. I know how to work hard. I know how to keep the faith. And I promise you, I swear on my mother's grave, I will not.
You know, I guess it's like with parents, your firstborn is always the hardest because your life it gets turned upside down. It was a very scary time for me because, of course, he's my firstborn. But it was also a very rewarding time because you create someone, a beautiful child, and you fall in love with them. You get to see that when they take their first step, when they finally sleep through the night. And I think what I really enjoyed was that when I would buy books and we would sit down and we would read all these different kinds of books. And I think that's where he started to just really pick up on learning about the world.
Emily growing up was always very independent, always really sassy, always marched to the beat of her own drum. She was always like challenging, but always like really fun to be around. She was always witty, always had the good comebacks, making everyone laugh.
I never had problems with Adam drinking drugs when he was growing up. When he went away to college, I never heard or he never talked to me about anything like that as far as drinking or drugs. However, when he did join the Navy, that's when he started talking about how some people would get really, really drunk and that he would go pick them up and take them home. But I do know also that Adam was a heavy drinker. He became a heavy drinker, but he never did that when he was growing up with me.
Her freshman year adjusting, she had some trouble and she started using hard drugs, and we had to send her to rehab in the middle of the school year. And she came through that good. And then stayed off of the hard drugs as far as I knew. And then her sophomore year, she started smoking marijuana again, and then it led to the synthetic drug that she started smoking.
At the time that I did try it, because I tried it at about 14, there was nothing else to smoke that particular day, and then they was smoking Kush. What are y'all smoking? They said, we're smoking some Kush. They said, you want to try it? I said, nah, I heard about that stuff. So you sure? I said, nah, maybe I'll go ahead and try it. So I tried it that day.
It's kind of like a cigarette. A lot of people see, okay, cigarette's really bad, but once you take that first hit and you realize what it does to you, like physically and mentally, it's a completely different ball game. Like, just the smell of opening up a fresh bag was like an aphrodisiac.
When I came home from juvenile, some friends, those negative friends came back, and I thought I was stronger than it, but I fell into temptation. And I smoked in my backyard. I smoked that Kush, and this time I only hit it. I hit it about the same like 3 or 4 times, and then like 10, 15 minutes goes by, and I'm like, nah, I'm really messed up on this. And they said, nah, you'll be good. Next thing I know, you know what I'm saying, I'm in the hospital again.
I used to smoke marijuana. It's a very comparable high, except it's has more of a morphine effect. The morphine effect is where it gets you addicted. I mean, I started out like any drug, just doing it once a week. Then it became twice a week. Then it became almost every night, smoking a little bit. Then it became waking up with it, doing it all day long.
I've noticed that they reformulate. Like the chemical that's in it, they'll find that illegal. They just reformulate and put it out again. And then what happens is it actually comes out stronger. So like the original Kush that I started smoking like 3 years ago, I don't even feel that now. And that's lighter than nicotine. I don't even feel it now. So as whatever's in the chemical that causes you to get high, you definitely have the same element of drugs because you have to use more and more of it to get the same effect.
Just my stuff right here.
Just your stuff?
That's my stuff right
Where
here.
else is it?
That's it. You tear my room
Well, that's
apart.
$2,000 in fines.
I know. And I can't afford that shit. Can't afford that shit, Tharp. You know that. You know I can't afford that.
Did you already smoke it already today?
Yeah.
You on it right now?
Not really, no.
You already faded off? It's already faded off?
Oh, yeah. One day, I was coming home from work, I was taking somebody home from work, and she was smoking one, and I said, you know what, give me a hit off that. And I took a hit off it, and I had to pull my car over, literally. I literally had to pull my car over and sit in the parking lot. And why I smoked it again after that, I don't know. Because I smoked it again after that, and I shouldn't have, because it had me so fucked up. I couldn't even think straight. I had to pull my car over, literally, and I couldn't drive. So after I smoked it again, it just kind of gets addicting after that. But once you smoke it, that first time, you're like, and everybody will say the same thing when they smoke it that first time, oh my God, I can't never smoke this shit again. But then they smoke it again, and then they smoke it again. And once you smoke it again and again and again, it becomes addicting. And once you're addicted to it, there's no getting off it.
I legally died twice from it. My heart completely stopped. I was dead.
I spoke to his roommate, and he told us that he and Adam had been using Kush every single day. They were smoking it every single day. He used to call me every 2 or 3 weeks to tell me of his latest adventure in Hawaii, but he stopped calling, and I would call him, and most of the time he wouldn't answer the phone. Now, I know that they drug test the military, so why should I even think about Adam using drugs? I never had a problem with him using drugs. But now in hindsight, there were a lot of signs that I totally missed. They totally missed.
It become addicted to drugs. A lot of people can't maintain without it. You know, some people, you know what I'm saying, they don't have it, you know what I'm saying, they don't get it, they go out, rob and steal and kill for it.
What we know about synthetic cannabinoids is people can be psychologically addicted. We're still studying the long-term effects and whether or not there is a physical addiction. There are some reports that are being published about withdrawal from synthetic cannabinoids. It's not a specific toxidrome like we see with alcohol or benzodiazepines, barbiturates, or opioids for that matter. But people who stop using Kush and other synthetic cannabinoids abruptly do have some restlessness and other non-specific signs and symptoms.
Once you're addicted to Kush, no matter what, each day when you wake up and throughout the day, you're going to be thinking, how will I get it? It's a whole business operation. There's transportation, there's financing, supply, inventory control. But from the moment you wake up, throughout the day, you're planning and trying to figure out how you're going to get the Kush, how you'll get the money for it, where you'll get it, where you'll use it, and everything else falls by the wayside. And it's particularly painful to see in mothers with children that this pathological process takes over their brain, and all of a sudden their families and everything else in their lives falls lower in priority.
If you talk to these people and you sit down with them, very often they'll say something to you along the lines of, you know, I just want to be normal. You know, I just want to be able to have a good time and not get in trouble, to take a, you know, to get a high every once in a while, not get in trouble. I just want to be normal. And what they're failing to understand, and this too is a function of addiction, is that if your measure of normalcy is the ability to use a mood-altering drug, you are so far not normal, you're out of the total normal ballpark.
I start my day out with some so I don't get sick, physically throwing up, like as if I was coming off withdrawal and heroin, because I do so much of it. And then thereafter, it's just a maintenance all day long. At least every 2 to 3 hours, I have to smoke a blunt or I'll get sick. And that's even at night. At night, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and have to smoke, or I'll end up throwing up.
Your body starts shaking. Your insides, literally, you feel like your muscles, your joints are hurting to the point where you feel like you're going to explode. Your insides literally feel like they're going to explode. You're throwing up, you're sick, you're diarrhea, you're sweating, you're hot 1 minute and you're boiling and you're cold the next. It's about 9 days, about 9-10 days of a detox that you go through. It's a big time detox that people are going through of this shit.
If you're not careful, you'll be in the hospital. You're doing things you don't want to do. On the inside, as you get too hot, on the inside you begging for help, but nobody hear you.
One of the problems with synthetic cannabinoids is that they're such a heterogeneous mixture of chemicals that you never know what is going to happen when you use them. We see a variety of signs and symptoms. The most consistent findings are neuropsychiatric, but they can range from coma to catatonia to agitation to psychosis. In addition, other body organs can be affected. We see a lot of kidney disease, acute kidney injury. When people abuse these things, there are potential cardiac manifestations. We've had people have heart attacks, infarctions from these things. There have been strokes, seizures reported after abusing cannabinoids. One of the problems is you never know what you're going to get or how potent the stuff you're using really is.
And it's not unusual from where I work at the psychiatric unit to have patients brought in by the police or fire department who have been found running naked through the park and then being violent, aggressive, and psychotic, hallucinating, or being extremely paranoid. Those symptoms, the paranoia and the aggression, are so characteristic of Kush.
I've seen psychosis, paranoia. People just don't know where they're at. They go from being, you know, at a calm state to being a manic state out of control, and then, you know, by the time we get there, and sometimes they're not even breathing, and EMS has to take drastic measures and get them to the hospital.
It changes the way you think and the way you act. You're just not normal on it.
Kush gives you long-term psych issues. It makes you go crazy. And there's so much chemicals and stuff in it that they can't tell you exactly how everyone's going to react.
Every one of them, their clothes come off, they get way too hot, their body is working overtime. Your body produces way too much acid and you get way too hot, and that's what eventually will kill you.
They're out running around saying all sorts of crazy stuff that doesn't make sense. If the police department's involved, they've usually been, the officers are trying to subdue this person and they're throwing the officers off. I've seen that a couple times where they have taser barbs in them and they're still running down the streets with taser barbs on their back.
Well, first times that I saw Kush out here, it's about 10 o'clock in the morning. This guy, maybe in his 30s, was butt naked and in the middle of the road in traffic, barking, trying to bite like a dog on all fours, going after these cars. And we showed up, PD. This is the first time that I came across with it, so we're trying to figure out what's going on. Do you have a seizure? Is he post-ictal? What's going on? And this is my first encounter. We eventually cornered him to to a corner of a fence, and eventually he just went out. He just stopped being alive. You know, he started breathing his heart rate, so it was safe for us to pick him up. And we worked him, and he ended up dying. He was early 30s, he ended up dying because of that. And then I think that was my first encounter with Kush, and then from then it was just a domino effect. We just kept making them all the time.
And it's not a very well understood drug, so we see a whole range of different reactions. And with that, we have specific protocols that we use to treat these patients. And you can give the same medication to 3 different patients and have 3 different outcomes. Just the way that it interacts with the body, we don't really understand it right now.
It kind of varies from person to person, which I think makes it very dangerous, because one person, it can have the effect of like PCP on, or makes them like really strong. You know, they don't feel any pain. They're kind of incoherent. They don't listen to you, you know. The other person, it could have an effect like weed, where they're kind of mellow, kind of laid back, kind of chill, not really, you know, maybe like slurred speech. And then some people, it's like cocaine. Their heart is racing, they're, you know, pounding. And then there's some people that hallucinate on it. You know, they'll smoke Kush for the first time, or they've been smoking it, and like I said, those chemicals change inside there, and then all of a sudden now they smoke it and they're having hallucinations and stuff, like they're on acid.
Death is the biggest one. We've had a couple people in this town just recently die from it. But there's so many other things that nobody ever takes into account. I mean, if you do it, we make so many people that, you know, they stop breathing, or their respiratory drive has been suppressed so much because of the chemicals that they've inhaled that are in this stuff, that it can cause brain damage, it can cause all kinds of stuff.
You can die. I mean, people die from it on a regular basis. The ambulance, HFD makes more ambulance runs for Kush than anything else.
She was pretty like chill and relaxed and calm in her life and seemed happier. And then all of a sudden her mood had flipped to where she had anxiety, and she wasn't able to make it through a school day. She was having to come home in the middle of the day. She was having a really hard time even getting out of bed. I remember, like, she wouldn't even make it to the bathroom to throw up. She was throwing up every day, but she was just opening her window and sticking her head out the window and throwing up from her bedroom. And it was like black chunks of stuff. And she wasn't really eating. She wasn't getting along with me. She wasn't getting along with her boyfriend at the time. It was a Friday night, and my husband and I were at work, and we got a phone call from her boyfriend, and he said, you know, Emily's not acting right. And I said, well, you know, give her her migraine medicine, let her go to sleep. He said, okay. And then he called back again and said, she's like making up some words and she's not talking right and she's bouncing over into the walls. I had my son come over and check because he was closer. He's older than Emily. And I had him come over and check, and he called me and said, no, she's fine, she's sleeping, I don't know what he's talking about. And then it took only about 10 minutes later until he called me back and said, you need to come home now. She's screaming at the top of her lungs, saying words that aren't really words, not making sense. She's banging into everything, she's throwing stuff, and she's gonna hurt herself. And I said, you need to hang up with me and call 911. When I got here, he was still on the phone with 911. She was again back in bed because she had been doing this on and off since he had talked to me. Like every 10 minutes, she was getting up out of bed and having a fit and then passing out and then getting back up and having another psychotic fit and then passing out again. When they came in the house, it was 5 constables. It was 4 men and 1 woman. And, you know, they're all bigger, older men and the woman. And the 2 EMTs coming in, and they roll her over in her bed and try to like say, Emily, you know, do you know where you are? And she just started like screaming words that they didn't make sense, like just noises, or repeating her boyfriend's name over and over and over, saying she didn't want to wake up for school. They couldn't get her to calm down. They couldn't get her to respond to them, to what they were saying. She started like fighting them, and the EMTs were trying to give her a sedative and trying to get her into the ambulance. And I mean, it took all 5 of the constables to like physically hold her down, 1 on each limb and 1 on her head, restraining her in her bed so that they could give her a shot to sedate her.
I seen people hit the Kush, run up down the railroad tracks, jump out in front of cars, run into people, fall out, bust their head open. And I seen all kinds of crazy things.
I done saw guys die of it, a buddy of mine, and I'm like, man, you was just like an alcoholic, and you just he hit it, and he just like, boom, one dude like bust the back of their head, and this, that, and I can't plant a potpourri seed of Kush seed and come up with some Kush for you.
My side effects is I can't go to sleep at night without it. I don't trip. I don't get sick. Some people, they get sick. I've seen a lot of people get sick, like literally sick. And when they get their first smoke, it goes away. Some people can't go to sleep. Some people can't. Some people catch seizures. I had a girl, a friend of mine, she died. She mixed crack and Kush together. She took 2 hits and died.
It's scary. Your body, to me, for what it did to me, my body just went completely numb. I've lost sight, and I have a blackout. I wake up, and it's just like, what the heck happened?
One day before going to sleep, I smoked it. I was thinking I was gonna die, but I know it was my mind, so I prayed to God to take me off of that feeling, and I promised not to smoke again. But the next day, I was smoking again. Yeah, because I knew it was just a mood altering, and it was the Kush making me feel like that.
Their body language, some of the noises, some of the incoherent rambling or just groaning that they make, and then the puke. Puke's probably one of the #1 things.
There have actually been studies evaluating why people use synthetic cannabinoids, and it seems to be one of several reasons. Some people mistakenly believe that these are safe. They think they're a safer alternative to marijuana. Other people think that they're legal and they can avoid prosecution. Some people know they're illegal and know that they're going to get a high from it, but they take them to avoid detection using standard urine drug screens. Other people are using them just because they're curious. They want to see what kind of high they get. And a lot of people have reported a high that's very different from marijuana.
This carries the same penalty as possession of marijuana or delivery of marijuana.
The biggest misconception with Kush has been the legality of it. For the longest time in Texas, the law was confused. Was it legal? Was it illegal? Had the chemicals changed so they were not illegal anymore? And in 2015, the Texas legislature, working with a variety of different groups, went ahead and clarified the law. Kush is illegal. Every form of Kush being sold now is illegal. The chemicals being used are illegal. It is all covered in the law, so there's no misunderstanding at this point. Synthetic cannabinoids being used to get high are illegal.
Even though it's not marijuana, it's got the same punishment range as marijuana. So if you get caught with 0 to 2 ounces, you can go to jail for up to 6 months. If it's 2 to 4, you can go to jail for up to a year, and then we get in the felony range from 4 ounces to 5 pounds. But for dealing, for selling, this is the best thing the legislature did, it's only a felony. You will be convicted of a felony if you're caught selling this stuff. The least amount you could get would be 6 months to 2 years in the state jail. And that's less than a gram. So if you're selling above a gram, you're going to the penitentiary.
Got pulled over for PI. and they found a Kush blunt on me.
That was my mentality on life, I had enough. Smoking till my eyes red, white all in the face. Strawberry, sunshine, and pineapple was a taste.
Kush basically has done nothing for me. Besides getting me high, it has done nothing for me. It has not got me a job. It has not got me a family. It has not got me a place to stay. It has not got me nothing. So basically, Kush is not give me nothing. It's not getting me nowhere.
Drug abuse and synthetic cannabinoid abuse doesn't just affect the people who are using. It affects the family members, it affects the friends, it affects the children of people who are using. But on top of that, it affects the community as a whole, because law enforcement, EMS has to deal with people who are high on Kush. Hospitals have to deal with people who are high on Kush. Chemical industry, you know, ExxonMobil, Chevron, the plants in our area, they have contractors, subcontractors who could abuse Kush, and it's not easily detectable on drug screens.
These guys think it's legal, think it's okay to smoke. Hey, if it's legal, you know, it shouldn't be a problem. It won't pop up in drug tests. I can still get high, still relax, do whatever. But that's not the case.
That's the third time already he's pulled me over this week for the same thing. This is, if you can look at my police report, I done got 3 of the same charges. That's $1,000 every time they find me with Kush. That's all they ever find on me is 1 bag, because I'm a smoker. I don't sell the shit.
Synthetic marijuana to me was another resource of getting high without testing dirty in the drug test.
Synthetic cannabinoids are pretty much undetectable by just your regular in-house drug testing. There is a specific test for synthetic cannabinoids. It is a lot more expensive than your regular drug test.
I started out as a scaffold builder in the refineries. I was working at the plants, and they started giving us random hair follicles and drug tests. Well, word came around the plants that they had some stuff that was smoking that wouldn't show up in your urine test. So I tried it out.
We had this gentleman come in who was actually a contractor inside of one of the plants. The supervisor brought him in under reasonable suspicion because he was displaying some signs of being on something. The gentleman come up to our counter to sign in. He couldn't remember his name. He didn't know what time it was. He had trouble staying awake. So the safety officer asked us to run every test that we've had on site. So we did, and he come back negative on everything. Unfortunately, the company safety policy did not state that we were allowed to test for synthetic marijuana. So even though we did test for it, we could not divulge the information. But in the end result, he was positive for synthetic marijuana.
See on the back, it's real common on this package. It'll say things like not for human consumption, potpourri. It'll tell you it's legal. Let's see, this one says it's legal under the new Florida law, HP, one which has no effect. It's in Texas. Has nothing to do with us. But it tells you it's not meant to be burned, smoked, or incinerated, or in any manner. It should be kept out of the reach of children. But it's packaged in a Scooby-Doo package.
It's marketed in a manner that it's with bright colors and foil packages and superheroes and the such, so kids think it's cool.
It's stuff that's being marketed by these dopers in packages to make them look like Pokemon cards. If you look at the packaging, it's designed to catch the eye of young people, of adolescents or pre-adolescents, and these people that are doing this, I think, are just the scum of the earth.
I do know that this drug appeals to those who don't have a whole lot of money, so towards the vagrant population, but then it's also advertised to the younger group, my daughter's age, 13, to where it's got pictures of happy faces, and some of them have Sleeping Beauty characters or SpongeBob. So it's marketed towards a younger group, but then it's also cheap enough for the younger group to purchase and cheap enough for the vagrant population to purchase. And if you're a CEO of a Fortune 500 company and you want to pass a drug test, well, you can get high on this and it won't show up on a drug test.
People don't realize how bad it is. I think they think that it's just some legal high they can get that's not going to cause any problems until we're there and they're dying.
When they started making the laws about it and the people that were making it started changing the makeup of the chemicals in it, and then it only took one time for, you may smoke Kush for a year, nothing would happen to you, and then all of a sudden those people, the type that you buy, change up the chemicals in it, and then they smoke it one more time and it makes them go crazy all of a sudden.
With this Kush, so to speak, we don't know, because whoever wants to add a chemical to it can. And whatever you want to add, you can. And so we don't have a remedy. We don't know. We really, literally don't know what we're dealing with. And so we just present the symptoms. Whatever the symptoms that are presented, we manage those symptoms the best we can.
The makers of this stuff just change it. They change the ingredients so that, we never know what's in it. And they don't know what's in it when they smoke it. And sometimes they have a easier time with it because the chemicals that are in it aren't that bad, and then sometimes they get chemicals in it that really mess them up.
So my goal was before school, take whatever they needed, whatever kind, and I'd put it in a brown sack, make it look like a lunch. Then I'd go upstairs, put it in a locker, then of course they pay me through the hallway, then tell them where it is, the combination, and that was that.
It's been everything from kids, young kids like the 11-year-old, teenagers, 40-year-old, 50-year-old, you name it. It's just a very readily available substance apparently, and a lot of people, use it whether it's repeatedly or not. Some people say it's their first time trying it and they're having severe, serious issues. Some people, like I've said, they use it over and over and over. So
I go for the nerds, best way to put it. All the nerds, surprisingly, everyone thinks like the jocks and all like the cool kids are always into it, but surprisingly they're not. It's a lot of the people that are, I guess you could say, the outcast. They're not really accepted, so they're looking for some sort of escape. Just like some people will cut, some people they'll snort coke. I mean, they do different things. So that's the crowd that I aim for, was mainly like band kids, kids that like read comics, anime club, a lot of art students, surprisingly.
I think it's very, 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 very dangerous because it's so easily accessible, so easily used in mass quantity, that even if you could handle a little bit, it's so easy to get a hold of a whole bunch of it. And it's so tempting, I got plenty to use all of it.
We had been traveling to Austin to go see my son Matthew. The Navy called. We were still about an hour and a half away from Austin. And they said that they had a really important message to give us. We told them, well, just call us later. We're on vacation. And the lady said, she goes, no, this is a very important message. What hotel are you staying at? We will meet you there. And I remember when I hung up the phone, I told my husband, this is not going to be good.
On July 4th of 2014, I had a seizure in my bathroom when I was smoking it. My husband and my mother-in-law called 911. They came into my bathroom. They asked if I had a child. My husband and my mother-in-law said yes. Last time I remember, I was in my hospital room. They let me go because I was conscious. I knew what I was doing and everything. My husband on the way home said, why did I have to sign CPS paperwork? And I was like, I don't know. And on July 9th, 5 days later, my son was taken away from me because of what I had done.
When we got to the hospital, they had obviously seen things like this before. They labeled it as a drug overdose. They said basically they were gonna keep her there, and when she woke up in the morning, she'd have to go to a rehab center or psychiatric rehab center. And at that point, I was mostly just angry and scared, but not scared because I didn't think she could die. I wasn't, at that time, I didn't think that she could actually die from it.
I'm in recovery, and the first treatment facility that I went into, inpatient, when she asked me my drug of choice, I told her, I said, well, really, the drug that I'm using every day, I'm smoking Kush every day. I'm using other drugs in binge use, but I'm using Kush every day. And what the caseworker and the LCDC said was, you know, we don't know anything about that one. We're seeing it all over the place. It's coming through the door, left and right. And we don't even know how to treat it. We don't know anything about that one.
In the 8th grade, I was testing at a college level, but then I started smoking that Kush, and just everything just went down. Like, we was doing, I'm in the 11th grade right now, and at the school that I go to alternative school. We're doing 7th grade work. I couldn't even do that.
We arrived in Austin, went to the hotel, and inside were 2 officers waiting for us to come in. And they told me that Adam had died.
As the minutes went by and then the hours, and she, in the hospital, she stayed combative, and she was biting the ER nurses, thrashing around in the bed. They had to have her tied down to the bed, and it was like a scene out of a horror movie. I didn't even think like could happen in real life. I didn't think, you see those movies and horror films or thrillers and they look so fake, but here it was happening to my daughter. I remember during her calm moments of like singing lullabies and just trying to calm her down, but nothing was working.
When people talk about synthetic cannabinoids, that is a whole group of compounds, so it's not just one thing. And over time, as these compounds change, the drugs that we saw as synthetic cannabinoids 5 years ago are not the ones that we're seeing anymore. The ones that are coming on the scene now, we're starting to see people who are dead because of use of the synthetic cannabinoid. And at least from my perspective, that's really the concern, is that, you know, they're all being lumped under this moniker of synthetic marijuana, synthetic cannabinoids, but they're evolving into much more dangerous chemicals as time goes on.
I think what makes the situation with Kush even worse is how destructive it is. In addition to people dying from it, from toxicity, it often causes them to act aggressively or erratically or paranoid or in destructive ways that other drugs might not do.
I didn't find out exactly how Adam had died until maybe about 5-6 hours later. He went on to base. He went to the edge of a soccer field. He took a knife, a box knife, and he cut his arm, his left arm, so he bled out. The coroner told me that they have found packets of spice on his body and packets of spice in his house. I didn't know what spice was, so she explained that it's synthetic marijuana. That's how I found out about spice.
Finally, the doctors came in and said that they had to sedate her completely, like they had to put her into a coma for her own safety. We weren't allowed to talk to her in the room. We weren't allowed to talk in the room. We weren't allowed to touch her. It was a really dark room. She couldn't have any kind of outside stimulation. And she was like that for about 2 days, and that's when they showed us the pictures of the scans of her brain. And they told us that the black parts were dead tissue. It was like 70% of her brain was black. They told us that the tissue that was alive, that was still gray matter, was being killed by the black areas. And they told us if she did survive, she wouldn't get off the respirator because one of the areas in her brain that was affected was the part that is your natural instinct to breathe. And they told us that she wouldn't be able to move her arms and legs. They told us she wouldn't be able to eat on her own ever again. My dad was in the room with us, and he asked if she would know that we were in the room with her, and they said no, she wouldn't even know that we were there. She would just be in the same state that she was, you know, asleep on her respirator and never conscious again. And they told us to really talk about it and think about it, of what Emily's life quality would be. And you know, we talked it over with our friends and family and knew Emily wouldn't want to live like that. I knew I wouldn't want to live like that. And it seemed cruel and selfish to me to keep her alive like that. So on the Sunday morning with all of our family there, we removed the respirator and took her off life support. And the only thing that they kept her on was morphine to help her comfort level. And she just held on. She didn't die like they said. She kind of was moving a little bit, but not really. As the hours went by, I mean, this is probably 10 hours later and she was still alive, and they said that now it could take a few days, it could take 5 days, they weren't sure. I dozed on and off through the night, and at one time, like early morning, maybe 4 in the morning, I rolled over and there were nurses and doctors standing around her. And I stood up and her eyes were open. And I was just, the first thing is, "I love you, Emily." And she whispered back, "I love you too." And that was just like the most amazing moment ever.
The first few times were good, and then I started to get headaches and I was throwing up. Yeah, headaches and throwing up, and really bad anxiety. Yeah, I would wake up in the middle of the night, you know, and like have to smoke it. But I had an alarm on my phone, you know, that would wake me up.
She started therapy 6 hours a day. It was physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. At that point, she had a feeding tube that she had to have in her stomach to be able to eat. She couldn't eat by mouth yet. She couldn't use the bathroom yet. She had to wear adult-sized diapers, or as they called them, briefs. She couldn't dress herself. The aides would have to come in and do everything for her. She was just laying in the hospital bed. She couldn't even sit up on the edge of the bed by herself. And From there, they taught her how to eat again, how to swallow food. She had to learn how to sit up on the edge of the bed, how to be able to sit in a wheelchair.
I cannot be alone, sadly. Like what? Like any 16-year-old or 20-year-old would not like to be in my situation. Being in a wheelchair, having no friends, like not being able to hang out with anybody. Yeah. Just having family. I mean, yeah. What else can I say?
This stuff is so much more dangerous than most of the drugs of abuse we've seen previously, and it's so prevalent to the point where it's becoming a huge public health crisis.
Well, marijuana, you get a little bit of laziness, some short-term memory loss maybe. But this stuff, I mean, like I said, it ruins lives. And it doesn't take but one time and you're hooked. And then after that, you know, it doesn't take but one time and you're dead.
I just hope that whoever watches this, that they'll pay attention to what's going on with their own children, that they will not just think it's just the homeless or the transients, because it really it is having an impact across the board.
We have these community meetings, and I was on the east side, and this woman, we were talking about Kush because it's really bad on the east side, and she knew there was a convenience store right across from a school that was selling it, and she went into that business and she told that owner, do you know what this does? Do you know it's killing people? It's putting kids in the hospital, it's giving strokes, all this? Well, no. She said, you have a good business here. You have kids coming here to buy drinks, buy candy, all that stuff. We're going to shut you down if you don't quit selling Kush. And she put so much pressure on him with all the community. That's the kind of thing that needs to happen. Besides us, the community needs to rise up against this stuff.
Nobody gave me the advice like that. They didn't want me to do it. But I like to give other youngsters advice. I don't want y'all to do it.
Don't do it. Try to find, if you're looking for that escape or something fun to do, find a hobby.
Being confined to a wheelchair, losing your independence, losing all of your friends, losing everything, your future. There's no drug that's worth losing your future over.
I was in rehab for from August 28th through September 28th of 2014. My relationship with God grew stronger. I didn't have none of the urges that I had, that I wanted to smoke synthetic marijuana when I was in rehab. I've gotten out, and like I said, when I got out, a week later, I relapsed one time. And after that, I have not smoked it again, and it's the best decision I have ever made was not to touch the drug again.
Like, the high isn't worth it, but if you do, like, this is what's gonna happen to you. This or death. I mean, those are both not good outcomes.
I know which friend gave Adam some of these drugs. I know who that person is. But a real friend does not help you die.
It's just a really dangerous drug, and you're playing with your life, and you're playing with your family's lives, and it's not worth that.
Smoking Kush, you're putting all these different chemicals into your body for a little high, for a 15-20 minute high. When you have the capability of dying off of it.
We talk to the parents, we talk to the families, talk to the patients themselves if they are kind of in the right state of mind, and tell them you may not get bit the first time, but sooner or later you're going to get hit with it hard, and it may be the last time. You may not survive it.
That's the question you have to ask yourself is, am I willing to die over this?
never really cared about my own life but others. Now I do this for my mother and my sister and my brother. God bless me with so much opportunities like the last time, so I can help my communities. Trying to lift my people up and stop bringing the city down. Too negative around, we need to smile and frown. Step into the compound, let me hear the noise when you raise your voice. Every action, decision come with a choice. Never ever slowing, stay showing the road I'm going. People knowing our brothers and sisters, all the children chosen. Got a testimony, use it, don't abuse of what you're doing. If you're not comfortable speaking to the people, write some music. It ain't hard really, just gotta find your comfort zone and change your whole direction. Get connected, can't do it alone, cause it's a hard road. But them him who gives me strength will be changing people's lives, bring them to the light, do what it takes. Can I break through the ache and the trials and tribulations? Just stay strong and pray on facing any situation. First that contemplation, then you change the nation. But progress is a slow process, so pray and be patient. Starts within the cell, so if you're lost and get some help. If you need to yell or cry, just don't get high and end up in a cell. There's people to turn to if you ever need advice. Might not be what you like, it's alright, that's right, just don't think twice. Every bad thing you see, there's always more good than bad. Living in a casket, but now it's time to lift the last. Praying that it don't crash, because look how far I've come. Hit the ground, now we're running, having fun, I've overcome addiction, ain't got a hold on me, cause I'm free. If you catch me in the streets, look at my eyes, say what you see. Just a young G, coming up, headed to the top. Until the day I drop, I ain't never gonna stop.